Hi, my name's Tom Hume. I'm the founder of Future Platforms. We're a small mobile apps business. We work for pretty well any platform you can name and quite a few you've forgotten about. And we work for telecoms businesses, content owners and all sorts of startups. So this year we've launched the official app for the Glastonbury Festival on iPhone, Nokia and Android. We've helped the BBC do some experiments around privacy and how people feel about Facebook check-ins when they're out at live events. We've done geolocated mobile apps, mobile websites, that sort of thing, and some work with the delegates of the World Economic Forum to help them organise their social lives around Davos. Now, I'm quite late to the party with BlueVia. I heard a lot of the interesting detail about it at a talk that James Parton did about a month or so back. And what's interesting to me about it is how it supports many of the ideas that people were talking about back in the very early days of mobile when we were first set up. Now, I come from a development background, so I have a tendency to get excited about the specifics of APIs. But what really shone out about BlueVia was the business model that they put behind it. The way that you can get 20% revenue share of messages that are sent out from mobiles, 10% of revenue share of messages that are sent to mobiles, and that covers SMS and MMS. Traditionally, if you were using normal premium SMS, you'd be getting back about a tenth of a penny for each one. So that's a really radically different model when it comes to what a developer is earning from this. And they've got plans to extend all of it to voice calls that you generate as well, which is where it gets really interesting. I think they're planning to do that around September, October this year. Now, if you compare that to the traditional way of doing SMS, which was via aggregators, you typically there have a setup fee for rental of the shortcode or a keyword on your shortcode, which you'd be paying monthly. Often you'd have a minimum monthly spend, maybe something around the £150 mark. And the aggregators never gave revenue share on regular SMS. They only let you do revenue share on these premium 10p SMSs, and then, as I say, you only get a small amount back. So the model is really quite different. Now, why is this really interesting? Firstly, to me it's interesting because it completely aligns the interests of developers and telecoms operators. It doesn't preclude you doing charging for apps or anything like that, or subscription models. But what it does do is it encourages app developers to themselves encourage communication in the users of their products. And that lets app developers then benefit from any communication that they create. Operators have always been about taking vast numbers of very, very small events, text messages, voice minutes, that sort of thing, aggregating them and billing for them. And this builds beautifully on that capability and that infrastructure. Secondly, there's no setup fees. And that's a really interesting side of it. So normally you'd have to set up an account with someone, charge that account and maybe pay rental fees, as I was mentioning. And there's none of that with this sort of model. What this means is that there's a much lower cost for doing experimentation. And I think that we can expect to see lots of small businesses set up and try and use this sort of thing. Or small teams within larger businesses that may not have easy access to budgets can then just try out lots and lots of different things. And a lot of these experiments will fail, but some of them will be successful. And that's really interesting. Thinking about the sorts of businesses that might use this stuff, I find small businesses particularly interesting. They're very socially and economically important. About 99% of enterprises, I think, in the European Union are small businesses, and they account for about 50% of our gross domestic product and an awful lot of jobs. So helping developers, in turn, build mobile services targeting small businesses is really, really important. And what sort of things would this enable? Big businesses have been using mobile for an awfully long time, but there's plenty of room at the bottom end of things. And I want to give you a couple of examples of the kinds of things that I'm talking about. So imagine a ticketing service for small venues and pubs. You book your ticket online or through your mobile phone, show a code to someone at the front desk, and they then text off to check that it's valid. The venue avoids getting multiple redemptions of any given ticket, and they pay maybe a few pence for each transaction, which in the grand scheme of things is next to nothing. The developer maybe gets a couple of pence for each person going into the venue. The end user gets a really, really convenient form of ticketing, nothing to print out or carry around or lose or anything like that. If you consider you might have, 100 venues, each redeeming 50 tickets a night, 2p a ticket, that works out at about £3,000 a month for the developer. And you could probably charge those venues a setup fee and a small monthly fee to participate too, maybe a tenner each. And that starts to look and feel like a worthwhile little business in its own right. And really, 100 very, very small venues is nothing when you consider how many there are in the UK. Again, going back to this idea of lots and lots of small charges being aggregated, the thing that mobile networks are best at. And how about participation media? I mean, we have lots of voting on TV with things like X Factor. But what about smaller broadcasters, someone like, say, local radio? Imagine a model where you've got 175,000 listeners and you run a picture competition. Maybe 0.5% of those listeners send in a photo every day to you by picture message. You know, cute kitten photos, those sorts of things, the sorts of stuff that's really popular online. Maybe 10% of the audience vote once a week on which one that they like the most to get it up the rankings, to get the most voted for kitten picture, a prize, that sort of stuff. That works out about £2,000 of revenue each month. And that's without any of the setup fees or support that you might charge those sorts of institutions. And there's no real risk in it for them either. If you replicate that nationally, there's 150 local commercial radio stations, probably a few more than that actually, all dotted around the UK. Starts to look and feel like a reasonable sized business. And the key point about all this stuff is it's really nothing new. These are the kinds of services which people in the mobile industry have been thinking about and talking about for years. And we've been waiting for carriers to open up and provide. So it's really good to see BlueVia doing this sort of stuff. But it's more interesting, in a way, to see this as a starting point for someone like WAC to come along and then roll out these APIs to all sorts of different operators. And that's something that WAC have said that they're going to be looking at. At which point, the network itself becomes a commercial resource for third parties to play with. End users, operators, and developers are all going to benefit from that sort of thing. Thank you.